Each exchange shapes the final verdict. Every camera uncovers reality, grasping your legal protections, enforcing true justice.
Hey, you! Stop right there and put down that bag. I'm sure you stole it, just like you stole that uniform.
Excuse me? Why are you stopping me?
Don't play coy. Drop the bag, sailor. Let's check what you're hiding.
Sir, that's my bag and this is my uniform. I just got off a flight. What's the problem?
The problem is it doesn't add up. People like you don't walk around looking like that unless it's a scam.
People like me?
Officer Brandon Walsh, a 39-year-old Atlanta airport cop with 13 years on the force and a drawer full of buried complaints about racial profiling, locked eyes on a black man in navy dress blues walking through the terminal and decided right then that the uniform had to be fake. Within minutes, Walsh had Master Chief Derek Sullivan, a decorated Navy SEAL with over 15 years of special operations combat experience, face down on the polished terminal floor, knee planted between his shoulder blades, cuffs cutting into his wrists. Walsh leaned close and muttered to his partner, "These guys snap," unaware that body cameras were recording every word, that federal phones were already ringing, and that what he'd just done to one of the military's elite operators would end not just his career, but trigger a Pentagon-level reckoning. What Walsh didn't know was that Sullivan had just left a classified briefing, carried orders signed by a 3-star admiral, and that within 12 minutes, investigators from NCIS, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Justice would be mobilizing to ensure Walsh never wore a badge again. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to hit the like button for more stories you don't want to miss. That morning at 6:58 a.m., Master Chief Derek Sullivan walked through Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport with the kind of posture that came from 2 decades of military discipline. At 41, he moved with quiet confidence, garment bag slung over one shoulder, carry-on in his right hand. His navy dress blues were pressed sharp, the ribbons on his chest telling a story most civilians wouldn't understand. Multiple combat deployments, special operations missions, commendations earned in places whose names were still classified. He was traveling on official orders, connecting through Atlanta on his way to Norfolk for a command briefing. The day before, he'd attended a memorial service for a teammate killed overseas. He'd chosen to stay in uniform out of respect and because he was moving directly between military commands. Sullivan passed the coffee kiosk near the security checkpoint, his mind on the briefing ahead, when a voice cut through the ambient noise of the terminal. "Hey, you in the uniform, stop right there." Sullivan stopped mid-stride and turned. Officer Brandon Walsh stood 10 feet away, coffee cup in one hand, radio on his shoulder, eyes already hardened with suspicion. Walsh had been watching Sullivan from the moment he'd entered the concourse. Among his colleagues, Walsh was known as old school, code for a cop with a short fuse, heavy hands, and a pattern of complaints from black passengers that somehow never resulted in discipline. Over 13 years with the Atlanta Airport Police Department, Walsh had been accused of targeting black travelers for extra screening and aggressive questioning. Junior officers had quietly requested transfers after working shifts with him. Supervisors had looked the other way. Standing slightly behind Walsh, his partner, Officer Ryan Pierce, shifted his weight and watched the interaction unfold. Pierce, 34, had been on the job for 5 years and had learned early that agreeing with Walsh was easier than challenging him. He rarely spoke up, rarely questioned Walsh's judgment. It kept the peace between them. "Yes, sir," Sullivan said, his tone even and respectful. Walsh's eyes traveled slowly over the dress blues, the ribbons, the rank insignia on Sullivan's sleeve. His expression didn't soften. "That's your bag." "Yes, sir." "Put it down." Sullivan lowered the carry-on to the floor, his movements deliberate. "Is there a problem, officer?" Walsh stepped closer than necessary, invading Sullivan's personal space. "We'll decide that. Where are you coming from?" "Charleston. I'm connecting through here on official travel." "Got orders on you?" Sullivan reached slowly toward his inside jacket pocket. "I have my military ID and travel orders, right?" "Keep your hands where I can see them," Walsh snapped. "Don't get smart with me." Pierce moved without being asked, shifting to Sullivan's side and effectively boxing him in. "Just do what he says," Pierce added, his voice flat and detached. Sullivan kept both hands visible, palms open. "I'm complying, officers." Walsh leaned in, his voice dropping, but still audible to the few travelers who had started to slow their pace, sensing something was wrong. "A lot of people wear uniforms they didn't earn. You fit a description we've been given." Sullivan's jaw tightened slightly. "What description is that?" "Don't play games with me." Walsh's tone turned cold. "You people think a costume gets you a free pass through security." The words landed like a slap. Sullivan's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained controlled, measured. "Officer, I'm a Master Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. You can verify that with my military ID." Walsh shook his head slowly, a thin smile crossing his lips. "We'll verify whatever we need to verify. Turn around." "For what reason?" Sullivan asked. "Because I said so." Pierce reached for Sullivan's arm. "Turn around, sir. Now." Sullivan complied, turning slowly and placing his hands behind his back, palms open and visible. "I'm not resisting." Walsh grabbed one wrist and yanked it higher than necessary. "You're tense." "I'm standing still," Sullivan replied, his voice steady despite the pain shooting through his shoulder. A few travelers had stopped now. A woman with a stroller, a middle-aged man in a ball cap who lifted his phone. Somewhere in the background, a teenager whispered to her friend. The energy in the terminal had shifted. People knew something wasn't right. Walsh leaned close to Pierce, his voice low, but not low enough. "Watch him. These guys snap." Sullivan heard it, every word. "That's not accurate, officer." Walsh's voice rose, sharp and angry. "Don't tell me what's accurate. You don't look like a Master Chief. You don't look like you belong in that uniform." Sullivan turned his head slightly, his tone still calm but firm. "You don't get to decide that." That was when Walsh's hand drove hard into Sullivan's upper back, shoving him forward with sudden, brutal force. "Get down!" Walsh shouted. "I'm not resisting," Sullivan said, his balance breaking as Walsh shoved again, harder this time. Pierce hooked Sullivan's arm and pulled. The combined momentum sent all three men forward. Sullivan's knees hit the tile first, then his shoulder, then his face. The sound echoed across the concourse. Sharp, sickening, unmistakable. Several people gasped. A child asked her mother what was happening. "Stop moving!" Walsh yelled, driving his knee between Sullivan's shoulder blades, pinning him to the cold floor. "I am not moving," Sullivan said through clenched teeth, one cheek pressed flat against the polished tile. "You're hurting me." Walsh forced Sullivan's wrists together behind his back and snapped handcuffs on, the metal biting into skin. "You should have thought about that before you got mouthy." Pierce glanced nervously at the growing crowd. Phones were out now, multiple angles, recording everything. "Clear out. Keep walking," Pierce said, but no one moved. A man in a veteran's cap stepped forward, his voice firm. "That's a Navy uniform. You don't need to be doing all that." Walsh shot him a look. His face flushed. "Sir, mind your business." Sullivan lay still on the floor, his breathing controlled, years of training kicking in. He stared at the polished tile beneath him, acutely aware of every camera, every witness, every word being captured. He could feel the blinking red light on Walsh's body cam. He knew exactly what was being recorded. And somewhere in that terminal, in an office not far away, a supervisor's phone was beginning to ring. Sergeant Monica Davis had worked airport security for 11 years, and she knew the sound of trouble before she saw it. The echo of a body hitting the floor carried across the concourse, followed by the kind of silence that meant something had gone very wrong. She pushed through the gathering crowd and found Officers Walsh and Pierce standing over a black man in full Navy dress blues, face pressed to the floor, hands cuffed behind his back. Walsh still had his knee planted between the man's shoulder blades. "What's going on here?" Davis asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Walsh answered immediately, his tone defensive. "Possible impersonation, Sarge. Subject got aggressive when we tried to verify his credentials." The man on the floor turned his head slightly, his voice calm despite his position. Sergeant, I'm an active duty Navy SEAL. I have military ID and official travel orders. I complied with every command. I did not resist. Davis looked from the handcuffs to the dress blues to the ribbons on his chest. She'd seen Walsh work before, seen the pattern of who he stopped. Let me see his identification. Walsh hesitated before reaching into the man's jacket and pulling out a military ID card and folded papers. His jaw was tight. He clearly didn't like being questioned in front of witnesses. Davis examined the ID carefully. The photo matched. The name read Sullivan. Derek. Rank. Master Chief Petty Officer. She unfolded the travel orders and scanned them. Norfolk Naval Station. Command briefing. Official military travel. Everything looked legitimate. Master Chief, you're active duty? Davis asked. Yes, ma'am. Naval Special Warfare. I'm traveling under orders to a scheduled briefing. Davis turned back to Walsh, her expression hardening. Brandon, why is he in handcuffs? He was being evasive, wouldn't answer our questions properly. Got an attitude when we pressed him. Sullivan's voice remained steady. I answered every question they asked. When I asked why I was being stopped, that's when Officer Walsh put his hands on me and forced me to the ground. The man in the veteran's cap spoke up from the edge of the crowd. That's exactly what happened. We all saw it. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Walsh snapped his head toward the voice. Sir, I need you to step back right now. Davis raised her hand. That's enough, Brandon. Take your knee off his back. He's already restrained. Walsh shifted his weight, but his tone stayed defensive. We still need to verify everything. Anyone can print fake military IDs off the internet. Sullivan met Walsh's eyes. You already ran my information through your system. You know it's real. Davis looked at the body camera clipped to Walsh's vest, its red light blinking steadily. Standard procedure doesn't involve slamming a compliant service member face first onto the floor in the middle of a crowded terminal. Walsh's face flushed. He matched a profile. We had reason to believe the uniform might not be authentic. What profile? Davis asked directly. Walsh didn't answer right away. We get alerts all the time. Stolen valor cases. People pretending to be military. Sullivan spoke quietly, but his words cut through the tension. You didn't stop any of the white service members in uniform who walked past this checkpoint in the last hour. Just me. The air went still. Several people in the crowd nodded. The teenager with her phone held it higher. Davis closed the folder containing Sullivan's orders. Uncuff him. Right now. Pierce suggested nervously. Maybe we should take him to the office first. Run everything through the system again. Davis shook her head. No. You have his valid military ID. You have his official travel orders. You have half this terminal, watching and recording. Take the handcuffs off immediately. Walsh unlocked the cuffs, his movements rough. Sullivan slowly brought his hands forward and flexed his fingers. Deep red marks circled both wrists where the metal had cut into his skin. Davis crouched slightly to meet Sullivan's eyes. Master Chief, are you injured? Sullivan touched his cheek where it had struck the tile. My face hit the floor pretty hard. My shoulder is sore. But I'm okay. He paused. I want everything that just happened documented officially. It will be, Davis said. We'll get medical to check you out right now. Walsh muttered under his breath. He's fine. He's just trying to make this into something bigger than it is. Sullivan slowly stood up. His uniform scuffed at the knee and elbow. He looked directly at Walsh. You made this what it is when you decided I didn't belong in my own uniform. Davis stepped between them. Both of you need to step back right now. She turned to Sullivan. Sir, I apologize for what just happened. We're going to review all the body camera footage and file a complete incident report. Sullivan glanced at the crowd of witnesses, at the phones still recording. With all respect, Sergeant, this isn't just a matter for an incident report. What I just experienced was excessive force, and it wasn't random. Davis knew exactly what he meant. She had heard the whispered complaints about Walsh for years. The pattern of stops. The passengers who always seemed to match his so-called profiles. She pulled her radio from her belt. "I'm calling the chief." Walsh's head snapped toward her. "For what?" "We handled the situation." "No, Brandon. You escalated it." She keyed her radio. "Chief Martinez, this is Sergeant Davis in Concourse B. I have a use of force incident involving an active duty naval officer in full dress uniform. I need you here immediately." There was a brief pause, then the chief's voice came back, tense and sharp. "Say that again." "Active duty Navy SEAL, Master Chief rank, traveling on official orders. Body camera footage is active. Multiple civilian witnesses." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm on my way right now." Walsh exhaled hard through his nose. This is getting blown completely out of proportion. Sullivan looked at him steadily. "No, it's being taken seriously. There's a difference." A few minutes later, Chief Luis Martinez arrived. He was in his early 50s with the bearing of someone who knew when something serious had happened. He took in the scene quickly. The crowd with their phones, the dress blues, the scuff marks on Sullivan's uniform, the red marks on his wrists. Walsh and Pierce standing off to the side, both visibly tense. "Somebody tell me exactly what happened here," Martinez said. Davis spoke first. "Chief, Officers Walsh and Pierce detained Master Chief Derek Sullivan without clear probable cause. Force was used to take him to the ground. The Master Chief was fully compliant. His military ID and travel orders are valid. There are multiple civilian witnesses and body camera footage." Martinez looked at Sullivan. "Master Chief, is that accurate?" "Yes, sir." Martinez turned to Walsh. "Why was this man detained?" "Possible stolen valor, Chief. He became argumentative when we attempted to verify his identity." Sullivan's voice remained calm. "I answered every question. When I asked why I was being stopped, Officer Walsh immediately became physical." The veteran spoke up again. "Chief, I watched the whole thing. That officer went straight to putting hands on him." Martinez nodded. "Thank you, sir." He looked back at Walsh and Pierce. "Both of you, hand in your radios right now. You're being pulled off the floor, pending review." Walsh stiffened. "Chief, that's not necessary." "It's absolutely necessary, because if that body camera shows what I think it shows, this just became much bigger than an internal issue." He turned to Sullivan. "Master Chief, your command will be notified immediately. Given your unit and status, this is going to involve more than just airport police." Sullivan understood. "Understood, sir." Martinez gestured to Davis. "Escort the Master Chief to a private office. Make sure he's comfortable. No further contact with these two officers." As Walsh and Pierce removed their radios, Martinez added, "And preserve all body camera footage immediately. Nothing gets deleted. Nothing gets edited." Martinez looked at Sullivan one more time. "You said you're Naval Special Warfare?" "Yes, sir." Martinez's expression tightened. "Then this is going to reach people who take these things very seriously." Somewhere in a back office, a phone was already ringing, and in less than an hour, investigators carrying badges that said NCIS and Department of Justice would be walking through those same terminal doors. Chief Luis Martinez walked fast down the corridor toward the operations office, phone already pressed to his ear. Behind him, Sergeant Monica Davis stayed beside Master Chief Derek Sullivan, keeping a respectful distance, while an airport supervisor cleared a small conference room. Sullivan sat in a chair near the wall, posture still straight, despite the soreness in his shoulder. His uniform was scuffed at the knee and elbow. The marks were visible, so were the red lines on his wrists from the handcuffs. Martinez stepped into the room and closed the door. His face was tight, his tone careful. "Master Chief, I've contacted your command duty officer at Naval Special Warfare Group 2. They're looping in their legal team and NCIS. This is no longer just an airport police matter." Sullivan nodded once. "That's appropriate, sir." Outside the room, Officers Walsh and Pierce stood near a desk, radios turned in, body cameras still attached to their vests. They spoke in low voices, but the confidence that had been there an hour ago was starting to crack. "This is getting out of hand," Walsh said quietly. "We followed our instincts. We did what we're trained to do." Pierce looked uneasy. "Instincts or assumptions, Brandon?" Walsh shot him a sharp look. "Don't start second-guessing me now." A technician from the department's evidence unit arrived and began pulling the body camera footage. The files were uploaded to the internal system and flagged as priority. Within minutes, a secure link was sent to Internal Affairs. Another went to the city's legal office. A third, at Martinez's direct order, went to a federal liaison number he rarely had to use. Inside the conference room, Davis received a call on her radio and stepped aside. When she came back, her expression had changed. Her voice was quieter, more careful. NCIS confirmed receipt of the notification. They're requesting the footage and witness statements immediately. They also want the names and full service records of the involved officers. Martinez exhaled slowly. Give them everything they ask for. Across the hall, Walsh noticed the shift in tone. The usual noise of a busy terminal felt far away now. The looks from supervisors were no longer neutral. A captain from airport police approached him, and Walsh could tell from the man's expression that something had shifted. "Travis, Internal Affairs is opening a formal investigation. You and Pierce are on administrative leave effective immediately." Walsh's jaw clenched. "For what? We haven't even given our statements yet." "You will, but not on the floor. Turn in your sidearms and follow me." Walsh's voice rose slightly. "This is because he's military, isn't it?" The captain looked at him coldly. "This is because of what's on your body camera." Meanwhile, in the conference room, Martinez's phone rang. He answered and listened, his expression growing more serious with every passing second. "Yes, sir. Yes, I understand. We have full video from multiple angles and multiple civilian witnesses. The officers have been secured and removed from duty." He ended the call and looked at Sullivan. "That was the Department of Defense liaison officer. They've notified the Pentagon's Office of General Counsel. They're treating this as a potential civil rights violation and assault on an active duty special operations member." Sullivan remained calm, his face unreadable. "Understood, sir." Martinez added carefully. They also asked whether any racially motivated language was used during the encounter. Sullivan's eyes didn't waver. "Yes, and it's on the body camera." Davis had already reviewed a portion of the footage on a tablet. She had heard Walsh's voice clearly when he said, "You people think a uniform gets you a free pass." She had heard the comment about fake uniforms and guys like him. She knew exactly how that language would play in a federal civil rights review. Across the building in a small office, the first full playback of the body camera footage began. 3 supervisors and an internal affairs investigator watched in silence. The footage showed Sullivan walking calmly through the terminal. It showed Walsh's initial approach, the tone in his voice, the unnecessary proximity. It showed the moment Walsh's hand drove into Sullivan's back. The sound of Sullivan's body hitting the floor was sharp and sickening. The crowd's reaction was audible. The words Walsh used were clear and unmistakable. An internal affairs investigator paused the video and looked around the room. "That's textbook excessive force, and that language is going to be a serious problem." Another investigator added quietly, "Given his unit and his record, this is going beyond the city. This is going federal." Back at the terminal, a call went out from the Department of Defense to Naval Special Warfare Command in Virginia Beach. Within minutes, a legal officer and a command representative were assigned to the case. Another call went to the Pentagon's Civil Rights Division. A third went to the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General because the incident had occurred in a federally regulated transportation facility involving airport police. By the time Sullivan was escorted to a quieter office with a representative from NCIS on speakerphone, the case had already split into 3 parallel tracks: internal police review, federal civil rights investigation, and military legal oversight. NCIS Special Agent Karen Doyle's voice came through the speaker, sharp and professional. "Master Chief Sullivan,
We're documenting your statement for the official record. Everything you say will be included in a report that goes to your command and to the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General. Sullivan recounted the stop in precise detail. The initial approach, the tone Walsh used, the words, the shove, the knee in his back, the handcuffs. He described how he had complied with every instruction and how he had asked a simple question about why he was being stopped before Walsh became physical. Doyle asked, "At any point did you resist or refuse a lawful command?" "No, ma'am. I asked why I was being stopped. That's protected speech. I complied with every instruction after that." "Did either officer use language that you believed was racially motivated or discriminatory?" "Yes, ma'am." There was a pause on the line. "That aligns with what we're seeing on the body camera footage. We'll include that in the federal report." In another office down the hall, Walsh and Pierce sat across from an internal affairs investigator. The mood was no longer casual or collegial. This wasn't a routine review. "Walk me through your decision to use physical force," the investigator said. Walsh answered, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. He was being argumentative. He fit a profile we've been briefed on. "What specific profile?" the investigator asked. Pierce shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "He just didn't seem right to us." The investigator wrote that down, then looked up. "Did you have any specific evidence that Master Chief Sullivan was impersonating a service member before you forced him to the ground?" Neither officer answered right away. The investigator continued, her voice flat and cold. "We have your body camera footage. We have civilian video from multiple phones. We have a federal agency formally requesting our files and your service records. Gentlemen, this is not going away quietly." Outside, word of the incident began, moving fast through law enforcement channels. A decorated black Navy SEAL in dress blues forced to the ground in a busy airport terminal. Racial language caught on camera. Pentagon notified within minutes. Federal investigators already en route. By early afternoon, a secure briefing was underway in a conference room at the Department of Defense in Washington. A still image from Walsh's body camera was displayed on a large screen. It showed Walsh's knee planted between Sullivan's shoulder blades, Sullivan's face pressed against the tile, his hands cuffed behind his back. A senior official looked at the image for a long moment, then asked, "Which department?" A staffer answered, "Atlanta Airport Police. 2 officers. One has multiple prior complaints for racial profiling that were never formally investigated." "And the service member?" "Master Chief Naval Special Warfare. 15 years of service. Clean record. Highly decorated. Multiple combat deployments." The official nodded once, his voice quiet but firm. "Then, this will be handled at the highest level. No negotiations. No quiet settlements. Full accountability." Back in Atlanta, Martinez stood in his office, staring at the same image on his computer monitor. He knew exactly what was coming. Federal subpoenas, command-level reviews, possible decertification of officers, civil lawsuits, media coverage. His department was about to be placed under a microscope, and what that microscope revealed was not going to be pleasant. He looked at Davis, who stood near the door. "This is about to get much bigger than our department." Davis said quietly, "It already has, sir." In the hallway outside, Walsh caught sight of a group of men in civilian suits entering the building. They carried credentials and badges that identified them as NCIS agents and Department of Justice civil rights investigators. They moved with purpose, and they weren't there to ask polite questions. For the first time since that morning, the confidence drained completely from Walsh's face. He could see it in their expressions, in the way they moved, in the folders they carried. This was no longer an internal matter that could be managed or quietly resolved. This was federal. This was permanent. And this was going to follow him for the rest of his life. The federal investigators moved quickly and without mercy. By the next morning, NCIS agents and a Department of Justice civil rights team had seized every camera angle from the terminal, every radio transmission, every incident report Walsh and Pierce had ever filed, and every complaint that had been quietly buried over the years. Chief Martinez was called into a closed-door meeting with city attorneys, federal investigators, and a Pentagon legal liaison. The DOJ attorney's message was direct and unambiguous. This is a federal civil rights case involving racial profiling, excessive force, and false statements, and the victim is an active duty, Special Operations Senior Chief. Martinez understood. Careers would not be quietly reassigned. They would be ended. Across the city, Walsh sat in his living room, watching the local news. The headline read, "Airport officers under federal investigation after violent detention of Navy SEAL." His phone rang. It was Pierce. "They took my badge today." Walsh was silent for a moment. "They're overreacting. They played the body cam footage, Brandon. The things you said, they're calling it racial bias." "I was doing my job," Walsh replied, but his voice lacked conviction. At Airport Police Headquarters, Internal Affairs completed its findings. The report was brutal and precise. Sullivan had been fully compliant. No legal basis existed for the level of force used. Walsh's language and decision-making showed clear indicators of racial bias. Pierce was cited for failure to intervene and for supporting an unlawful detention. Both officers were placed on unpaid suspension. Their firearms were confiscated. Their credentials were deactivated. 2 days later, the State Law Enforcement Certification Board opened an emergency review into whether Walsh and Pierce were fit to retain their badges at all. The Department of Defense released a public statement confirming that an active duty Naval Special Warfare Senior Chief had been subjected to unwarranted and discriminatory use of force, and that the Pentagon was cooperating fully with federal authorities to ensure their accountability. Behind closed doors, a senior DoD official told investigators, "You do not put hands on our people like that. Not in uniform, not in public, not ever. And when racism is on camera, we do not negotiate." Within a month, the outcomes became public and permanent. Officer Brandon Walsh was terminated for gross misconduct, excessive force, racial discrimination, and falsifying his official report. His law enforcement certification was revoked. He was barred from working in any policing role in the state. Officer Ryan Pierce was fired for failure to intervene. His certification was suspended indefinitely, effectively ending his career in law enforcement. 2 supervisors who had ignored previous complaints about Walsh were disciplined. One was forced into early retirement. The other was demoted. The department entered into a federal consent decree requiring new bias training, independent body camera oversight, and mandatory external review of all use of force incidents. Sullivan filed a federal civil rights lawsuit, citing unlawful detention, excessive force, and racial profiling. The evidence was overwhelming. The settlement reached before trial was in the millions. But more damaging than the money was the permanent record. Walsh's name would forever be tied to a federal civil rights violation. No department would hire him. No security firm would touch him. The badge he had once used as authority was gone, along with any future in the profession. At Naval Special Warfare Command, Sullivan's commanding officer spoke plainly during a private briefing. "You handled yourself with professionalism and restraint. The system failed you initially, but it corrected itself because of evidence, not noise." Sullivan nodded. "I just wanted it documented, sir." "It is," the commander said. "At every level." Weeks later, Sullivan walked through another airport in uniform, carrying new orders. No one stopped him. No one questioned whether he belonged. Back in Atlanta, a training bulletin circulated through the airport police department. It showed a still frame from a body camera. A black man in navy dress, blues on the floor, 2 officers standing over him. Under it were the words, "This is what failure looks like." No names were printed. They didn't need to be. The careers were already gone. Stories like this don't spread themselves. If this moved you, hit that share button and send it to someone who needs to see what real accountability looks like. Then drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, because these conversations matter everywhere.
True justice is an evolving process, and awareness remains your strongest shield. We appreciate your viewership and dedication to clarity.